It's time to Gimme 5 with Penny Black, and today I have 5 one-layer image cards to share with you. Hi, it's Therese from Lost in Paper, and I have 5 very different one-layer image cards to share. I'm starting by creating a rectangle on the front of a top fold card, and I'm using some post-it note tape to do that. I know that it's going to be an equal rectangle because each of the sides is exactly the same. I did wrap the sides around so that I could use my Misty tool, and I'm glad that I did because I didn't stamp it very well. I'm using some Onyx black ink because I'm going to be doing some Inktense colouring today. I wanted this to sort of have a washy feel, and I wanted to use really deep earthy colours, so the Inktense pencils are great for that. This is a really sweet image. It's called Friendship, and there are coordinating dies for this stamp as well, so if you're keen on it, it's a really fun stamp to colour. 5 dogs in a boat, who doesn't love it? And they're so cute too. I like to add my pencil lightly to the cardstock first. This is some 110 pound Nina cardstock, and I find that if I don't add too much water to the cardstock that it tolerates it very well, and I haven't had any problems. With regard to warping, what I like to do is very little warping, but just to make sure I run the whole card, after it's all dry obviously, through a die cutting machine at the end without any dies. So that just adds pressure to the cardstock and makes it flat again. It's a really good trick to use with any watercolour pieces of cardstock that you've got that have warped. And I do actually wrap it in a piece of copy paper just to protect it from any stray bits of ink that I might have on my cutting pads. So like I was saying, I like to do a couple of layers of pencil on the cardstock first, then come in with a fairly dry wet brush, does that make sense, and activate the colour, and then allow it to dry properly, and then I'll come in again and add some shading. And I'll often do this with the watercolour brush to the tip of the pencil technique and pick up the colour directly from that, or I will just add it lightly back onto the image, like colour lightly, and then reactivate it or activate it with the water brush again. And this is a really intense colour, so I don't know if you've ever used the Inktense pencils, but once they're activated and dry, they're permanent. So if you need to do any alterations, it's good to do it while it's wet. And I added a bright sky in the background with clouds. It took me a minute to like this. I wasn't really sure, but I did find that initially I was going to actually colour the whole section of my rectangle in, but over time, you know, things change as you're creating. So it felt like it was, my whole rectangle was a little bit low on the card, so I wanted to add the sentiment to the top of this. And I did actually cut apart my sentiment stamp to do this, and I know I'll use this sentiment more cut apart than joined together, and I thought this font worked perfectly on this masculine card design, and it's from the Good Wishes stamp set. So my second card today is probably the most clean and simple one. I'm using the stamp set Ballet Beauty and stamping her directly on the front of the card. When you're doing a very clean and simple card, you do need to make sure that the balance is right. So I find that grid acetate paper really helpful, especially if I've stamped using the stamp before. It could have some ink left on it, so it does protect my cardstock, because you do notice smudges on clean and simple cards. So the girl I've stamped using some, it's a fuchsia ink, vibrant fuchsia archival ink, and the sentiment comes from the Huggable stamp set, which I use a few times today. It's got some great sentiments in it, and I thought it'd be nice just to add some shading to the tutu. I have Prismacolor pencil in pink and just followed the guide from the artist's drawing. I did ground her with a pale grey pencil and of course had to add some sparkle. So I've got my Quickie glue pen, adding lots of dots of glue to the tutu and some really fine Prisma glitter. Now, this card I decided to actually use some oyster grey cardstock as the card base, so I'm actually using my Prismacolor pencils directly onto coloured cardstock here, which is something I really love to do, and just stamped a portion of this image. She's called Little Angel, and she does come with a few sentiments as well. I stamped her out with some smoky grey VersaFine ink because it's pretty much going to be a no line colouring technique here. You're not going to really see many of the lines by the time I'm finished colouring, and it is harder to see this image, so I've just got the stamp packaging off to the side. That way I can refer to that and then I know whether it's a hair or a flower, or it just makes it easier. And if I don't have the packaging, another thing that you can do, that I do, is re-stamp the image but in black on a piece of this copy paper, and then I can refer to that as well. Or look at the packaging. It'll often be coloured on the packaging and you can see, oh yeah, that's a flower, not a piece of hair, which is what I do sometimes. I miss bits. Okay, I am using lots of colours of pencils here today, and I will list them all at the blog, so I'll actually put the link in the description below, so you can, if you do want to know the exact colours that I've used, just head through there. I've decided just to show you half of the colouring of her hair because it took me an age, and that's, I know, I like to colour, I find it really relaxing, but it's not fast, and I find pencils in particular are not fast to colour with. Copics I find, for me, I can colour with my Copics much quicker, and the problem with one layer card designs in Copics is that they show through on the other side, and you can get away with that by, like you can actually stick a false back on the front of the card, or some people don't care if they can see the Copic colouring through. It is a handmade card, but it is something that bothers me. So if I'm doing one layer cards, I tend, like real one layer cards like these ones, I tend to use either Prismacolor pencils or just inks so that they don't show through. I like to come in with my shading at the end, so I'll often come in with like a dark grey, and here I even came with the black on her hair, and I think that really made a lot of difference to her. The sentiment today comes from the same little stamp set, and she is a little cutie. Although I did smudge her face a little bit, I think it turned out okay in the end. Right, my next card, I decided to create like a fun spotty background. So I've got my Distress inks, and this is a stencil with all different size circles on it. I don't even know where I got it from, but you could easily recreate something like this. If you've got circle dies, just cut some circles out of some acetate and in all different sizes, and look, like I said, you can notice any mistakes in a one layer card. And I accidentally didn't cover up enough of my stencil and got some ink in the corner of my card. But if you haven't got a mono eraser, I highly recommend them. They are awesome for removing little ink smudges or mistakes. It's almost like those pen erasers that we used to have when we were kids, and it works beautifully. And they're so cheap and they last forever. I think they come in a pack of two, which made me smile because I don't think I'll ever work through one. So this time it's a side fold card, And the three colours I'm using here with my scattering dots is milled lavender, tumble glass and twisted citron. I've got the stamp set Hedgie Presents and picked two of the images and a sentiment which is also from the Huggable stamp set. And just use my Misty tool to stamp these out because I'm coming in with my Prismacolor pencils again here. And sometimes it bothers me that they create a bit of a bloom and you lose that real bold black stamped image. And by using the Misty, I can come back in and restamp the image over top. I didn't need to restamp the sentiment. I didn't want to take the chance of mucking that up. And I did come in and ground these little hedges as well. How cute are they? I like them. My next card, this is the last one, probably the most detailed of all the cards. Pretty clean and simple cards overall today. I've got the set which is called It's Your Day. Stamped out a couple of the mice images, added some stamped masking paper masks over the top, and then stamped the third mouse in the middle, and that will make the two other mice look like they're at the front. I've covered all the images now with stamped masking paper, and I'm using my own handmade cloud die to create a cloudy background. And I did a really bad job. Here I was not liking the background at all. So I actually ended up coming in and making the top of the sky darker and came in with the tumble glass initially and then add the milled lavender, which I think helped. It's not my favourite sky, but you know, you can't love them all. And I think it worked out okay in the end. I decided to colour again with the Prismacolor pencils. You might be able to see it here, but what I did first was actually create a rectangle I did an impression. It's from the square frames, and so it's a bit confusing because it's called square frames, but it's actually rectangle die with little squares around it. And I made an impression on the front of the cardstock just with using my silicone mat. You've seen me do this before. I just ran it through my die cutting machine, and that just created an impression on the front of my card. And that's the border that I'm working within for my little scene here. I decided it'd be nice to add some really bright pinks to this scene because the sky's so dull and it's a birthday card. So I've got the neon pink out and I think that looks pretty fun. And I just basically coloured all the mice really lightly as well for the same reason, and then used my Gamsol to blend out the colours, which I think makes them a lot brighter and funner. And I think these mice are so sweet. There's a couple of these mice sets now that Penny Black have got, and they're really cute. And they have really nice sentiments in them too. And here I am colouring a balloon again. I have a love-hate relationship with colouring balloons. But I think I'm getting better, and I think it's only practice. But I am really liking this neon pink. It makes me happy because it's so bright. I don't think I've ever really used it much before. And on all of my images I did come back in and add lots of shading and used a sentiment from the same stamp set. Thanks for watching, and remember there are lots of ways you can connect with Penny Black. Don't forget to like today's video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Visit Penny Black on Facebook and Instagram and check out their blog and website. I've linked everything in the description box below. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Gimme 5 Same but Different Cards with Penny Black, and I look forward to seeing you here next time. Bye!